Well, welcome everyone. My name is Jennifer Moxley, and I am a former director of the McGillicuddy Humanities Center. I think I was like the third or fourth director, and there's been two since me, Margot Lukens and now Mike Sokolow. And I'm here in the capacity of Bria's advisor for her McGillicuddy Fellowship. So we've been working together for about a year. I just want to say very briefly about the fellows. This is a wonderful program that the Humanities Center sponsors to support undergraduate research. And it started with 2 fellows, and then it expanded to 4, and now they sponsor 8 fellows. It's been going for 2 years, so it's rapidly expanded. And because undergraduates apply for these fellowships, they're competitive, and if they get them, they are supported for 2 semesters, $4,000 a semester to work on a project. And so it's similar to like an honors thesis, but it doesn't have to be connected to honors. It could be an independent research project. And one thing I just want to say, and Bria's work is an example of this, is that often when we think of research, we think of scholarly pursuits or scientific pursuits, labs and things like that. But with humanities research, we have a larger scope of possibility. And one thing that the center does support is creative projects. And so Bria's is an example of that. But nevertheless, even though she wrote poems, she did do research. She read other poets. She did look into the history of feminist poetry. So she had time to kind of enhance and deepen her project with historical knowledge and background. So if you, I know we have some former fellows here on the call. I believe I saw Sarah Penney, and I don't know if there's others that I'm overlooking, but welcome. And if you have had a fellowship and you had a good experience with it, which I hope you did, please tell other talented young undergraduates who want time to work on projects to think about this wonderful opportunity that we have. And the other thing I will say is that you don't have to be a humanities student to apply for a humanities fellow. You could be, for example, in my advanced poetry workshop right now, I have a mathematician and a chemist who are writing poetry, and this would be an opportunity for them, for a student like that as well, to have a humanities experience, even if that's not what their major is. So that's just the little plug for the fellowship. And at the end of this event, Karen can kind of talk about upcoming programs or projects in the Humanities Center. All right, so now to our official program. While poetry has long been a powerful channel for women's voices from Sappho forward, a new urgency has emerged in the Me Too era concerning not only what women need to say, but also who they are speaking to. To the need to speak truth to power has been added the necessity of women speaking back to themselves and sharing with each other. A new generation of women are in the midst of discovering the great historical work that's been done by their feminist foremothers, and they are angry, thankfully, that such work has been systematically hidden from view by the power structure. So Bria is one of these women. Through poetry, Bria has found a form in which she feels empowered to admit fears she and others are only beginning to articulate, and to see how much the patriarchy has affected her and other women's sense of embodiment and self. Working with Bria over the past year, I've come to really admire her dedication to her art and to finding a way to tell the truth about women's experience in this moment in history. Her poems recall, for me, the words of the great 20th century American poet Muriel Rukeyser in her poem Kath Kollwitz about a German expressionist artist. What would happen if one woman told the truth about her life? The world would split open. Lamonica's poems tell the truth about women's experiences. The way this event is going to unfold is it's going to start with Lamonica reading a selection of her poems, and then she's going to introduce 4 guest readers who each have chosen some poems from the manuscript to share at the end of Monica's reading. And then we will open it up to comments or questions at the end of the formal presentation. So now I'm going to turn it over to Bria. So I also just want to say before you start, Bria, that it's been great working with you, and I'm really looking forward to hearing you read.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you so much for the introduction. I just also wanted to thank everyone for coming and for going on this long journey with me. I know there's been many long nights and a lot of stress, but I just wanted to thank everyone who has been with me, or Kathleen Ellis for listening to me talk every week about my struggles, and Jennifer Moxley for always being able to read my poems and give me such great feedback. This project has been going on for many years, but especially this past year, and it's just been amazing to have all of this support. So I just wanted to start off by saying that my collection of poems is written originally by me, and it is centered around contemporary feminism. And all of the poems are either things that I've experienced, or stories that I've heard, or from friends that have experienced them. And I kind of just wanted to write for the collective female body. And hopefully these poems are inspiring, or kind of just get you thinking, or maybe inspire you to write something of your own. So this first poem I'm reading is titled Dog-Eared. She reads like the pages of a paperback novel, glossy and crisp, just the way he likes it. Her corners are unfolded and her binding never bent back, because girls who bend themselves that way aren't good girls. He picks her up off the shelf and decides she is the one whose insides will be filled with his memories, and whose dedication page at the end of the wordless story will only include one name, his. This next poem is one of my favorites in the collection, and it's also one of the longest. It's called Crushed. My biggest nightmare is having my small frame bastardized by the outline of a tall, burly man whose grip on my heart is so strong he does chin-ups holding onto it. I look down to watch his finger trace swirls on the back of the soft skin of my hand as we walk through the city like parent and child on their way to school. He walks too fast, and it shows to ladies gossiping on the street. At each step, the space between our palms grows further and further apart. I wonder how they look at me, being dragged behind someone whose legs are too long for mine. Stopping to look over his shoulder, he makes sure my eyes aren't wandering or my head doesn't start to droop, as my fascination with the ants on the sidewalk breaks my gaze from him. I wonder how these people would change their view of us if we didn't look as if the smiles on our faces were being pulled up by the fingers of a love in pieces. Struggling to keep up the cologne of arrogance wafting around us in a desperate attempt to cover the stench. I ask my reflection in the storefront of the hair salon, how will I be strong enough to handle a world that won't accept me when my legs struggle to keep up with his? Sometimes I'm being swallowed by his shadow. A mouthful of interruptions, don't do that, clenching their teeth on the girl underneath, who is visualizing a place where everyone can look and see through the spaces in her perfect smile. He asks where my head is, tells me to pay attention to where I'm walking. I lift off the cracks in the concrete and stare at the fingers being cradled by his, him squeezing just a little too hard. This next poem is called Following Directions, and I originally got the idea for this title during a creative writing class where we had a set amount of time to write under a constraint using a specific prompt that had directions. And I actually ended up writing about something completely different than what the prompt told me, but I really liked the idea for the poem. Following Directions. I am supposed to write a poem about statehood, but all I can think about is the way that you yell at me and the invisible scars lacing my heart like a wreath. I try to scratch them off, but they don't flake like mosquito bites. They last. What makes them tough is a thick layer of anger and my distrust, and a voice that constantly rips open the scars by reminding me they are still there. Just long enough for the sores to ooze, the chances of healing are slim, the process long, and not worth it. This next poem is titled Impound/Constraint, and it's actually one of the first poems that I wrote for the manuscript, and I worked on it during a creative writing class in my junior year. Since then, I've continually revised it a bunch of times, and it actually looks much different now than when it did when I first started. And it's kind of about a woman who is analyzing a complex relationship that she is in, and kind of realizing that she has let herself become someone else from being in that relationship. Impound constraint. There is a hand around my heart, and it's not mine, and it hurts me. I am terrified that the hand will squeeze, and the heart will burst, and the pieces he created will ooze through his fingers and down the soft skin of his hands. Girls are always taught we should take care of ourselves, that we can make our own happiness. And we know this by the phrases sighed from the mouths of our mothers at the kitchen table after the school dance. But it is hard to remember these sighs when I'm coloring in the pictures of my life that only seem to develop pigment in the dimples of his cheeks and the curve of his arm around my waist. I ask myself, who has let this man become a piece of me that has broken off like the blunt end of a wax crayon and plunged right between my ribs? Who gave him permission to lodge himself into my fault lines? This next poem is called Teardrop Roots, and you can't see the form, but it's actually written in the shape of a teardrop. And it was originally inspired by an old tree that is outside of Patch Hall. It was so old that it formed these huge entangled roots that showed in the dirt. And when it rained, they would darken and get really creepy looking. And I would also trip over them and slip on them in the winter when I was wearing slippers, not snow appropriate shoes. But it just gave me this idea for a great title for a poem, and then the poem kind of just followed after that. Teardrop Roots. You form and melt to my body like a clump of hot ash. It hurts me to feel you on me, but I can't ever rub you off. You are where I come from. Where I come from has encased me in a second skin, you, that I did not choose to wear. It wraps around me like a hate crime saying, I am damaged, and clings to me in a full bodied suit that I wish could peel off, a full bodied suit that everyone manages to see, even when I don't want them to. A suit weighed down with memories attached to my skin like teardrop roots, and an unforgettable past that drips from the strands of my curly hair into a bucket for everyone to hear and feel and taste and see. I am exposed. This next poem is called Upended, and it was kind of meant to just be a shorter poem that gave readers a moment to breathe in the manuscript. Upended. When he asks you where you're going, tell him it's for a long walk with the dog. It's even better if there actually is no dog. Then you must cradle the air with your arms and place a toe on the stone step after calling your friend from work and asking her to pick you up around the corner. Stomping on the glass ceiling, you will squish your toe as it slices between the shards of your life that were long broken before the disaster. And this next poem is called Zen Garden, and it's one of the last poems that I wrote, and it also appears second to last in my poetry collection because of the title. My collection of poems is arranged as an abecedarian, which means it's kind of just arranged alphabetically by title. And this poem was inspired by a memoir that I read by Kelly Sundberg titled Goodbye, Sweet Girl. And it's about a woman who faced years of sexual assault and physical abuse. And she was just stuck in a scary and violent relationship that she couldn't escape from. A lot of the poems I have written are written to express the collective experiences that many women have faced and can relate to. And I'm not specifically speaking only for myself, but also for all of the women who can't. Zen Garden. I'm drunk and he's shouting, and I'm afraid if he hits me, I'll have nowhere else to go. To some people, a home is a safe space, a Zen garden of tranquility and cozy blankets, and midnights in bed next to a big snowy window. To others, it is a jail of fear, entrapping women in relationships that we cannot escape from. No one wants to talk about the ones who are silently hurting, the ones who don't need to make a sound for others to realize their suffering. The strongest women can hide it, but scars run deep and fear runs deeper. This last poem, it might sound a little jumbled, but it's actually because it's a compilation of lines from all of my other poems. It's arranged as an abecedarian poem, which I thought would be a good way to end the collection. I took one line from every other poem in the manuscript, so there's 35 lines for all 35 poems, and they appear alphabetically in order from A to Z. And if I ended up not being able to find a line that corresponded with the letters that I needed, like with Z and X, for example, I capitalized that letter where it appears in that line. And this is called And When You Smile at Me. And when you smile at me, being dragged behind someone whose legs cringe, and the confidence in his voice down the length of my arm, even if there's a feeling something's wrong, feminine. Girls are always taught we should take care of ourselves. He is sleeping soundly with his breathy sighs, and I have a story to tell you, if you're willing to listen. Jokingly. Knuckles raising lumps in the thick fur blanket. Later, when you ask me to make dinner, mouths, not knowing where they are or how they got there, over my skin and picks her up off the floor. Quick thank you to the rabbit is every woman who watches. Sometimes your biggest fear is to unravel. To me and every woman who has experienced waking up, upstairs, there is a man trying to piece back together, my friend. Vulnerability is ignoring the part of you, weighed down with memories attached to my skin. Anxiety walks in and laughs. Your hands are over my eyes, just long enough for the sores to ooze. And that was all the poems I had. Thank you everyone for listening. Now I think I'll turn it over to Professor Ellis if she's ready, and she is going to read one of my poems. Kathleen, are you ready to read?
Yes, I am. Who said that to me? It's great to see all of you, especially Sarah and Haley, who've been in my classes before. And what a great time we've had in the last 6 or 7 months, maybe longer. With the pandemic, it's hard to tell how much time has passed. And what I like about this event is that yes, we give a lot of praise to the McGillicuddy Humanities program. They've done wonders with almost all the people who I know who have received these grants, or these fellowships. It's been very rewarding, and for you too, Bria. But I have something to celebrate, okay? And this is where these programs interlap. And I was Bria's honors thesis advisor plus her capstone advisor. And so all of these come together in a really wonderful way. And I think without the work that you did for the humanities program, for your fellowship, that this would not be as rich as it is. So I'm going to read one of her poems. It's G for gullible. Gullible. I have a story to tell you if you're willing to listen. If you can spare a minute, fall down this rabbit hole with me. I'm Alice, and you're the rabbit holding the ticking clock as you watch me fall. A man pushed me. He told me to hurry up because I was late, ripped my dress and shoved my shoulders into the rabbit hole. He doesn't do well with anger. I'm crying, and you're the rabbit watching me from below as I'm holding together what's left of my dress, trying to breathe, and I fall and my stomach flips. You, as the rabbit, can do nothing but watch as you feign empathy for the girl with the ripped dress who is falling. You might not be the rabbit in real life, but for all intents and purposes, the rabbit is you. The rabbit is the onlooker, the one who can see the girl in distress and might feel an emotion, but offers nothing but a sad face and empty eyes. The rabbit is every woman who watches a drunk girl at a party taken upstairs by a man who knows how drunk she is and who knows she can't run away. Thank you. Thank you for writing all these great poems.
Thank you. That was great. Next, I think we'll have Sarah Penney, who is my friend, and she's also an English major, to read.
Hello. So first off, thank you so much, Bria, for actually asking me to read. It's been wonderful getting to hear about your progress as both like a friend and a fellow. So I'm so happy to be here and to like actually see the project in the full form. So I'll be reading 3 of my favorite poems from Bria's collection that have both been, I've picked both like stylistically and also thematically that have just kind of really spoken to me in my own experience as a woman as well. So the first one I'm going to be reading is called Frayed. Sometimes your biggest fear is to unravel. When you're stressed, you warp yourself into a shredded knot. Thick and dense, it maneuvers in and out of itself, twisting around until you can't tell beginning from end. You're terrified of the obnoxious relief that follows the untangling. It would ruin you. Who are you without him and anxiety? This is the question you ask yourself instead of trying to smooth the edges and brush down the phrase. He could repair you. He could weave your threads, untangle your knotted ropes, and collect them off the floor. But will you let him? And the next poem I'll be reading is The Disorder of the Work Shy, which personally spoke to me because I'm actually doing things for the job search right now, as I think a lot of us are. I know Bria is. And I thought that was just a really interesting poem on that subject. Hold on, I'm just finding it. So, The Disorder of the Work Shy. Do you know what it's like to be swallowed up in an office of never good enoughs, to wish you were in a bodiless feminine, to wonder why they picked the tall, abrasive man for promotion instead of you? I feel small, weak, trembling and rocking in a chair, chained to the floor that keeps my body as one of its millions of prisoners. Do you ever lie in bed and ask yourself, was it my femaleness or am I not good enough? And lastly, I'll be reading You Are, which honestly is my favorite one you did, Bria. So You Are. I am a contradiction, a weaving, twisting, broken collection of memories that have formed a rubber band bracelet you stretch and pull at, but it's voluntary. I am a landfill. I know that one day can follow another, but yet I let you pour into me the pieces of yourself that stick to the inside of my mouth like concrete. I am robotic. My mouth unsettles and moves in response to your questions at the dinner table, utterly and increasingly obligated to oblige. I know that one day can follow another, but I can't seem to remember how I answered you yesterday or how I think when I am alone. So thank you again for letting me read, Bria, and thank you so much for sharing your wonderful collection with us.
Thank you. That was great. Next, if Autumn is ready, she is going to read, and she is one of my friends from my sorority.
Hi. Before I start, I just want to say thank you to Bria for having me read. It's been amazing being able to be kind of like a proofreader and helping you out through the years since I've known you, and you've just become such an inspiration to me. And I'm just so excited that you asked me to read. For the poem that I'm going to be reading from your collection, I chose I Am Tired because it kind of speaks to the way that I see myself in other people's eyes. I am tired. I am tired of people not changing for me. Tired of always being the one who is tired. Tired of the weight that I carry being the person no one changes for. You might be thinking, who is this selfish bitch? Don't lie. You think the same things as me. You see, I am not tired because I want people to change for my own pleasure. I am tired because I'm always meeting the kinds of people who can never be trusted. The boys who take advantage of my kindness, my small frame. The ones who can lie to me and hurt me and tell me they are good people. I'm tired of not finding the one who can change. I'm tired of being continually disappointed by the hurt that I feel every single morning when I wake up. I don't want to be tired anymore. And then the second poem that I'm going to be reading is one that reading Bria's thesis actually inspired me to write. And it's called Definition. As children, we're taught to watch what we do and watch what we say, because what happens tomorrow is determined by your actions today, but your past doesn't define you. As teenagers, we're taught that sending one picture ruins our reputation, because what happens tomorrow is determined by your actions today, but your past doesn't define you. As young women, we're taught that if we are more qualified to receive a promotion over a man, we will still be judged, because what happens tomorrow is determined by your actions today, but your past doesn't define you. As little old ladies, we finally learn to embrace our femininity and accept that it was always society in the wrong, because what happens tomorrow is not always determined by your actions today. Your past does not define you.
Thank you. That was great. And now we're just going to hear from my mom, Linette Hice, as she reads some of my poems. Mom, you're muted.
And you would think I don't do this enough all day. No. And I still forgot. So it took me a while to actually pick two to read, because as a parent, I think we spend a lot of time sometimes hiding maybe fears that we have or pain that we go through, not wanting our children to know certain things about us. And yet, as I read Bria's poetry, some of my first reactions were, oh no, I didn't hide it very well. She knew exactly what I was thinking. But I think that that's the great thing about poetry, is it allows us to know sometimes that we're not alone, that she may not necessarily have been noticing maybe what I was going through, but she knows that people, my daughter's very aware of people and feelings, and very in tune to noticing things about them. So I did pick two that spoke to me. I don't know that she specifically knew that they would speak to me. But afterwards, if you would allow me a minute, I do have a poem also that I found that she didn't write, but that reminds me of her. So the first two will be poems that she read or wrote. The first one is called Statistic. The percentage of women whose hearts have been broken by men who take advantage of them is too high. We like them, let them in, wait for their texts and an invitation over. When they take advantage, we often don't know they are preying on us in our most vulnerable state. We think they like us. We think they are showing us they care. Even if there's a feeling something's wrong, we ignore it and we let it go. We fester in the moment like a star that stops twinkling and freezes because of a lapse in our judgment. It's not our fault that our twinkle dims and our star dies. We need more bright stars and less men who dim our light. And the other one is called The Loneliness Monster. And this is the one I think a lot of us can probably relate to it at some point, where whatever we're going through in life, for a while we feel that we're alone. You may find yourself in a dark corner, surrounded by lonely one day. You have done everything right. You have kept up with your schoolwork, found a boyfriend, controlled your anger, managed your anxiety, or has anxiety managed you? You may find yourself in a room full of people who are faceless and limbless, and you are the only one who can see, hear, and speak. You may feel someone grabbing your shoulder and then turn around and realize no one is touching you. You may be wondering why you seem to be on this journey alone, wondering why you are being forced to handle everything on your own. You may ask yourself why you can't pay rent, why you hate sitting by yourself, why your music's telling you that you don't need a man to be happy or to tell you you're worth something. You take a deep breath and convince yourself every day gets better, even though it doesn't. And the seconds will fill with meaning, and the minutes will get breathier. and time will slow down enough to fight the monster under your bed. And the last one that I wanted to read is by, if I'm hoping I'm pronouncing her name right, but it's Nikita Gill, and it's an ode to a fearless woman. And that is because that is what I think of my daughter. She is fearless and determined and just amazing. So I will try to read it without crying. I think your bones were made in an elsewhere place. How else does one explain this inconceivable strength that makes you? The way you look into danger's mouth and see no cemetery or death. Instead, carve your name into its teeth with a switchblade. Defeat it so effortlessly and throw your head back and laugh. Paradox girl, mighty woman, you are the thing that terrifies them. Both monster and maiden, both cure and poison, all of these things and at the same time human. Defined by no man, you are your own story, blazing through the world, turning history into her story. And when they dare to tell you about all the things you cannot be, you smile and tell them, I am both war and woman, and you cannot stop me. So I want to thank my daughter for inviting me and letting me read today. Love you.
Love you. Thank you. That was great. And now we have a lot of time left, so we can open up the floor if anyone has any questions or comments, or if someone actually has something that they want to read, they can feel free to share. And yeah, thank you guys for coming. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to just unmute and say whatever comes to mind or any comments.
Well, I have a question. As I've seen all of this research kind of from the start, from your initial proposal to now, and I've seen how it's evolved and it's changed names and can you talk a little bit about the process? Because I think we often just see this end product and we don't really see how people get there, how they, how did you select which poems to use, which to leave out? And how did you go about kind of curating, how did your ideas of what you wanted to include change over time?
Sure. So at the beginning, I knew when I first got the MHC fellowship and I first signed on with Kathleen as my advisor for my thesis that I wanted to do something that meant something to me and something that I was passionate enough about to be able to work on for so long and to make sure that I liked it enough to stick with it. And so I decided that writing about women was something that I knew, and following this path was going to be something that I was able to write about from not only experience, but from things that I've heard. So that's kind of the theme that I decided on. And I originally had a different title for this project, but I kind of followed the same path throughout my way, even though things have been heavily revised. I ended up with a collection of poems that I thought mostly revolve around three themes. There's sexual assault and the female body is one theme. Anxiety and kind of the inner workings of a female mind is another theme. And then the last one is about complex relationships and domestic violence. So using those themes, I kind of tried to choose poems for not only this reading, but for my collection that fit into those themes. And for the reading especially, I tried to pick kind of a few from each theme that really gave a good overview of what my collection is about.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. If anyone else has any comments or maybe a poem that they liked or any questions. Okay, if no one has any more questions or comments, then I guess we can end now unless anyone wants to read anything that they have. Okay, yeah, I think we're good. But thank you guys so much for coming. This has been so much fun. And I wish that we could have done it in person and had snacks. But I'm happy that you guys are all here with me and came to support me. it's great seeing everyone's face despite us all being at wherever we are. So I wanted to thank you guys. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. And if Karen or Jen has anything they want to say to end it, that would be great. But thank you guys so much for coming.
I think I would just say that it was really lovely hearing your poems read by your friends and your mom. I thought that was a really nice, and then just the different voices. So I love that structure that you chose. And it created like a kind of nice personal touch, though I do miss the fact that we can't clap, we can't make the clap sound, because that's so comforting. But that's all I'll say. I thought it was a lovely event, and I'm glad to have been a part of it. Karen, did you have any announcements or anything?
Well, I want to back up what Jennifer said, that we've been proud to have you as a fellow, and once a fellow, always a fellow. We have quite a few past, present, and I think even a fellow here. So I do want to echo what Professor Moxley said in the very beginning, that we want you to think creatively about what research can be. Maybe you've been binge watching Golden Girls for a month and you're super curious about female friendship and want to explore that further. We have a fellow next semester who's looking at binge watching and Netflix as it relates to medieval history. What facts get shared with the public and the accuracy of that information. But maybe traditional research is your route. And so we do have fellows that are doing a conference paper or a journal article. So we just want you to think broadly about this. It's important to us that we see passion. So this is not necessarily something that is GPA based. We do happen to have a lot of students from the honors program, but we want to be inspired by you and give you the tools to help you better inspire the general public. And so we're looking for ideas that are a little focused, but also kind of big and grand and forward thinking. And so if you're interested in becoming a fellow, it's a great opportunity, $8,000 a year, to really just delve into something that's entirely yours, which is not something that most undergraduates get the opportunity to do. Please feel free to reach out to me at mhc@maine.edu if you have any questions. There's information on our website. We have a rubric, instructions for proposals, but feel free to reach out. I think we'll have our next application deadline in mid to late March. So be on the lookout for more information about that. But again, I just want to thank Bria really for her great work here. It's both entirely personal and universal. It's stories that if you do not feel them yourself and know that experience personally, someone that has been through those situations. And I agree that it just makes it that much more powerful to have influential women from your own life to read that work. So well done. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And we hope to see you. We do have a number of spring events that are on the horizon. A lot we're still kind of working out some of the final details for. If you're not already signed up for our newsletter, I hope that you do, or follow us on Facebook. But we have a number of great events coming up in the spring related to the story of climate change, looking at kind of the human side of the impact of climate change. But we also hope to have some other events and hopefully some in-person events in the spring. We also have the rest of Bria's fellows cohort that will all be presenting their research. And so kind of late January through end of February, I believe, we'll have a couple of other fellows presenting what they've been working on over the past year. So lots to share, but no specifics yet, really. So we will, I'm sure, be sharing information by early to mid-January. Maybe we'll have some more official things on the calendar.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. This has been great. And I hope you guys all are safe and healthy and are finishing out the semester strong. And yeah, thank you guys. And if you want a copy of my poems, I can always send them to you if you'd be interested. So thank you guys and have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Beautiful job. Good night.
Thank you.